Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at some really incredible sources, trying to pull out the most important, maybe surprising, bits of knowledge.
Right.
And today we're going way beyond the usual chat about weight loss drugs.
Mm.
We're exploring the really profound observations of Dan Hollis,
hmm
specifically on semaglutide, emotional hunger, and this whole journey of self-transformation.
Yeah, our goal for this deep dive really is to understand how semaglutide isn't just about, the number on the scale. It's more about opening this unique kind of window, a window for like deeper self-discovery and the really fundamental work of rebuilding your identity. It's less a medical story maybe and more a human architecture story. That's how I think of it.
Human architecture, I like that. And Dan Hollis puts it so clearly, right? He says, semaglutide doesn't fix you. It gives you space to fix yourself.
Yes.
That's such a powerful way to frame it, isn't it?
It really is. It immediately shifts things. It's not about a magic pill. It's about a personal undertaking, a serious one.
So what's the biggest implication you see there in that quote?
Well, it really sets the stage for everything else he talks about. It's like semaglutide isn't the finished house, maybe not even the foundation. It's more like the delivery of materials that makes building possible.
Yeah.
But only if you're actually ready to do the often uncomfortable work that comes next. It's about creating potential, not handing you a ready-made solution.
Right. So let's talk about hunger then. Usually we think of hunger in very physical terms, don't we? Stomach growling, low energy.
Exactly. Very physiological. But Dan Hollis really pushes back on that limited view. He helps us see hunger as much more layered. That's his term.
Layered.
Yeah, or sometimes he calls it a stand-in or a surrogate.
A surrogate for what?
For deeper needs we often don't even recognize. Things like meaning, comfort, maybe just escape from difficult feelings.
Yes, this is really intriguing line. Emotional hunger sounds like a craving, but it's actually a question, a need asking to be seen. So what kind of questions might be hiding behind what feels like physical hunger?
Oh, all sorts. He points out how loneliness, boredom, anxiety, even sometimes really big joy can get tangled up in our relationship with food.
Hmm.
So these questions could be anything from, say, a need for connection if you're lonely, or maybe a desire for stimulation if you're bored, or just a cry for comfort when you're feeling anxious.
And that's where semaglutide comes in, the Ozempic Wegovy.
Precisely. Those are GLP-1 receptor agonists. And what they do essentially is quiet down those really loud physical hunger signals. It turns down the volume on all that noise, as he calls it.
Reducing the noise, okay. And when that static fades, Dan observes something pretty profound happens.
Yeah. He says when the cravings stop, the truth begins.
Wow.
It's this startling reality that surfaces when food isn't playing that role anymore. It reveals what food was actually doing for you.
It pulls back the curtain.
It really does. And that truth, well, it can bring up some really unexpected challenges.
Like what?
Well, when those constant thoughts about food just stop, a lot of people feel this weird sense of grief or disorientation.
Grief over food thoughts.
Yeah, because for so many, food was the plan. It was the rhythm of their day, the escape hatch. It was always there, a default setting.
That really hits home when you think about how much our lives revolve around eating, planning meals, thinking about the next snack.
Absolutely. So Dan keeps reinforcing this idea. Semaglutide isn't the fix itself. It's more like a biological pause, or that window we talked about.
A pause button.
Exactly. A pause button that lets you finally ask, okay, what am I actually hungry for? But when that familiar structure, that scaffolding of food, is suddenly gone.
You feel exposed.
Totally exposed. And that feeling, that discomfort, it's not a sign you're failing. Actually, Dan teaches that it's a crucial part of the work. It's where the real change can actually start.
So it's in that uncomfortable silence that the opportunity lies.
Right. It allows for a new kind of reflection.
So Dan Hollis guides people to observe the craving, not obey it. Is that right?
Yes, and to decode what that hunger really means. He sees the medication as providing critical time to reflect on those patterns, reset them, and maybe start to rewire that whole relationship with yourself and with food.
It's like the drug buys you time to do the psychological work.
Exactly, and he puts it so clearly. Semaglutide isn't the solution to emotional eating. It's the silence that lets you find one. That silence, yeah, it can be uncomfortable, but it can also be incredibly clarifying. It forces you to face maybe deeper issues you are using food to avoid.
Okay, so that brings us to building something new, a new foundation. Dan has this really crucial insight. Your body changes faster than your identity.
Think about that.
Yeah, losing an old self, maybe the identity tied to being overweight or constantly dieting without really knowing how to be this someone new. That sounds like a huge internal shift.
It is, and people often aren't prepared for it. The big pitfall there is this sense of internal disconnect, like your mind hasn't caught up with your body.
Right.
And that's why he introduces this concept of scaffolding. And he's very specific here. He doesn't just mean like motivational talks.
No pep rallies.
No, he means actual neurobiological replacement structures, things you actually do, concrete, repeatable actions, and mindsets that provide stability.
So what do these structures look like, these neurobiological replacements?
He talks about things like rituals, rhythm, routines. They form this kind of lattice, he says, that keeps people upright when the chemistry wobbles. It's about creating new, healthy default patterns and automated behaviors to replace the old food-centric ones.
Building new habits, essentially, but framing it as something deeper, neurobiological.
Yes, and what's really compelling is how he wraps this whole framework in community. Dan states it pretty bluntly. Most people don't fail because the medication doesn't work. They fail because they were alone.
Wow. That really underscores the role of connection, doesn't it? Something often overlooked in weight loss journeys.
Hugely overlooked, and it makes you totally rethink what support actually means. His teaching is support isn't optional, it's neurobiological scaffolding.
Scaffolding. Okay, so it's essential.
Essential. It highlights that this whole thing, it isn't just about weight, it's that human architecture story again. Rebuilding your sense of self, your agency, your meaning, partly through connection with others on a similar path.
This whole idea, it completely reframes success then.
Absolutely. Dan offers this really powerful redefinition. The win condition isn't just about eating less. He says this journey isn't about eating less. It's about living more.
Living more.
Yeah. It shifts the goalpost entirely, away from just a number on the scale towards feeling, as he puts it, alive enough to stop measuring everything by food.
Okay, this next point's from Dan you mentioned. It sounds really key. Weight loss is biology. Staying there is narrative.
It's maybe his most sobering, but also most empowering line.
So what does he mean by narrative here? The story we tell ourselves.
Exactly. The story you tell yourself about who you are now, what you're capable of, what your life actually looks like without food being the main character. He argues people often rebound not because they, failed biologically, but because they never rewrite their story.
They don't fill the space.
Right. They go quiet in that new space where food used to be, and eventually the silence becomes, a vacuum, and the old patterns rush back in.
So Dan's work is really focused on preventing that silence from becoming a relapse.
Yes. It's about intentionally, consciously filling that space the semaglutide opens up, filling it with structure, with community, with a renewed sense of identity, with purpose, and just time spent on that self-discovery.
They're proactive.
Very proactive. He clarifies it beautifully. People don't relapse into hunger, they relapse into confusion.
Confusion, not hunger. That's interesting.
Yeah. So from his perspective, keeping the weight off is less about managing metabolism forever and much more about narrative reassembly. It's about refinding of one's own internal compass. Now that the old coping mechanisms aren't needed or aren't working.
Which links back to what you said earlier. You don't hold on to weight loss with discipline. You hold on to it with alignment.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions and your life with this new, authentic self you're building, replacing the old story, not just, the old snack.
So this deep dive into Dan Hollis's insights, hopefully it's been an invitation for you listening to look beyond just the immediate physical effects of something like semaglutide.
Right. It's really about recognizing this potentially profound window it can open, a window for self-reflection, for rebuilding your whole sense of self, really, way beyond just weight.
So maybe as you go about your day, it's worth asking yourself those questions. What am I truly hungry for?
And maybe what parts of my life need support now that food isn't filling in all the gaps?
Yeah, it requires a different kind of awareness.
And as Dan Hollis powerfully reminds us, healing emotional hunger takes empathy, not judgment. It takes awareness, not rules. And curiosity, not punishment. It's a very human-centered approach.
Radical in a way.
Yeah.
Empathetic.
Definitely.
And maybe we can leave you with that powerful truth Dan Hollis revealed. When the cravings stop, the truth begins. What truths might emerge for you in those moments of quiet? Something to think about.